They called her Yhello, the last witch of Udani. She was a figure of mystery and reverence, a relic of a bygone era when magic was as common as the air they breathed. Not unkind, not cruel, just forgotten. Yhello was a gentle soul, her wisdom etched into the lines of her face, her hands steady and sure as they held the remnants of her once great power. Like an old song, a half-remembered dream. Her presence was a whisper in the wind, a fleeting memory of a time when the world was filled with wonder and possibility. Yhello lived simply, in a crooked cottage by the whispering sea. The waves sang her to sleep each night, their lullaby a reminder of the magic that still lingered in the world. She spoke to gulls, brewed potions for headaches, and dreamt of a time when magic wove freely through Udani's streets. Her days were filled with small acts of kindness, her potions a balm for the weary and the sick. Those days felt like legends now. The streets of Udani, once alive with the hum of enchantment, were now silent and still. The magic that had once flowed through them, a distant memory. Yhello wasn't blind to the city's plight. She saw the shadows that had crept into the corners of her beloved home, the fear that had taken root in the hearts of its people. Marauders had choked Udani's harbour, their ships like iron fists. They brought with them a darkness that threatened to snuff out the last remnants of light and hope. The king, bloated and drunk on his throne, did nothing. His eyes were blind to the suffering of his people, his heart hardened by greed and gluttony. He'd rather feast than fight. His table was laden with the spoils of his neglect, his laughter a cruel mockery of the despair that surrounded him. Yhello sighed. Even forgotten witches had their duties. She knew that she could not stand idly by while her city crumbled. With a heavy heart, she resolved to do what she could to protect Udani, to rekindle the magic that had once made it great. Udani, once a jewel of the azure sea, was now a cage. Marauders swaggered through the market, their laughter sharp as broken glass. Citizens huddled indoors, fear clinging to them like cobwebs. The king, they said, was negotiating. The king, they whispered, was a coward. Yhello watched from her hilltop. She saw the fear, smelled the smoke of burning homes, heard the cries of mothers, the whimpers of children. Her heart ached, a dull throb in her chest. Udani was dying, and its king was letting it happen. Word spread like wildfire through the cobblestone streets and narrow alleyways of the ancient town. The whispers were carried on the wind, from the bustling market stalls to the quiet corners where secrets were traded like currency. The news was astonishing. The king was offering a truce that could end the years of strife and bloodshed that had plagued the kingdom. But this was no ordinary peace offering. The price? Udani's gold, a treasure trove that could fill the royal coffers for generations, and the head of the last witch. The king's decree was clear and unyielding. Yhello chuckled, a dry, brittle sound that echoed in the dimly lit room. She had seen many things in her long life, but the folly of men never ceased to amuse her. Trust a king to choose gold and fear over his people. The weight of his crown seemed to press down on him, making him blind to the true cost of his demands. But fear was a weapon too, wielded by those who knew its language. In the shadows, plans were hatched, and alliances were forged in the dark. That night, Yhello made a plan. She sat by the flickering candlelight, her quill scratching across the parchment as she wrote. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and strategies, a simple plan, woven from moonlight and whispers. It was delicate yet powerful, like a spider's web glistening with dew in the early morning light. She wouldn't be a sacrifice. No, Yhello was far too clever and resourceful for that. She would stand tall and defiant, a beacon of strength and resilience. She would be a storm, a force of nature that could not be contained or controlled. The storm clouds gathered, dark and ominous, as if responding to her unspoken command. Udani had forgotten magic, but Yhello hadn't. She had spent years studying the ancient texts, mastering the arcane arts that had been lost to time. And she would remind them. The villagers would see the power that had been hidden away, the magic that flowed through her veins like a river of light. Oh yes, she would remind them all. Her eyes burned with an intensity that could not be ignored, and the people would tremble in awe and fear at the sight of her. The marauders arrived at dawn, their leader a mountain of a man called Ragnar. He grinned, a cruel gash in his bearded face, as the king's guards dragged a hooded figure towards him. The crowd gasped, but Yhello beneath the rough fabric only smiled. "The witch," the king wheezed, sweating, "as promised." Ragnar laughed, a sound like thunder. He ripped the hood off, expecting a frail woman broken by fear. He found Yhello's eyes instead, blazing with power. The laughter died in his throat. Panic rippled through the crowd. Was she mad? This was suicide. Yhello raised her hands, not in surrender, but in a gesture as old as the city itself. The air crackled, alive with energy. Above, the clouds churned, echoing her magic.
You made a deal with the wrong witch. Udani is under my protection. Leave now or face the consequences.
Ragnar snarled, but fear flickered in his eyes. He, like the king, had underestimated the last witch. The first bolt struck Ragnar's feet, cracking the cobblestones. The marauders scrambled, fear twisting their faces. The sky roared, unleashing a torrent of wind and rain. Yhello was a whirlwind, her magic a symphony of chaos. She summoned waves, tall as houses, crashing against the marauders' ships. She hurled bolts of lightning, scattering their ranks. The crowd, initially terrified, watched in awe. The last witch was fighting for them. A spark of hope flickered in their hearts. Ragnar, his bravado gone, bellowed orders. His men, battered and bruised, retreated in disarray. Their ships, some ablaze, limped out of the harbour. The storm, as if sensing victory, began to subside. The air, heavy with ozone and the tang of salt, slowly calmed. Yhello stood tall, her chest heaving, her hair plastered to her face. She was exhausted, but she had won. A cheer erupted from the crowd, echoing off the city walls. They chanted her name, their fear replaced with gratitude and something else. Hope. The king, his face pale, tried to regain control. He stammered, his words lost in the cheers. But then a figure emerged from the crowd, his face contorted with rage. The king's own advisor, a man known for his honeyed words and venomous ambition.
It was him. He made the deal, offered you up as a sacrifice.
The crowd turned on their king, their cheers morphing into angry shouts. The king, his face a mask of fear, had nowhere to hide. The advisor, fueled by ambition and the crowd's anger, seized control. He promised justice, a new era for Udani. Yhello watched it all with weary eyes. Power, she knew, was a fickle beast. She could easily rule, but that wasn't her way. Yhello retreated to her cottage by the sea. Her work here was done. Udani had rediscovered its courage, its magic. As for the new ruler, only time would tell if he'd learned the true meaning of leadership. Yhello hoped, for Udani's sake, that he had. The last witch of Udani became a legend, a story whispered around hearths. Her name was Yhello, a woman of immense power and even greater compassion. She was the last of her kind, a beacon of hope in a time when darkness threatened to consume everything. The children would listen in awe, their eyes wide with wonder, as the old woman recounted tales of Yhello's bravery and wisdom. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, courage can bloom and magic can be found in the most unexpected places. Yhello's magic was not just in her spells, but in her ability to inspire those around her. She taught the people of Udani to find strength within themselves, to see the beauty in the world even when it seemed lost. Her presence was a light in the darkness, a promise that hope could always be found. And sometimes all it takes is a single spark to ignite a revolution. Udani thrived under her watchful eye. The marketplace bustled with life, the city streets filled with laughter and song. Yhello's influence was felt in every corner of the city, from the grandest halls to the humblest homes. She was a protector, a guide, and a friend to all who needed her. The marauders never returned, wary of the witch who commanded the storms. Yhello's power was a force of nature, a shield that protected Udani from those who sought to do it harm. She could summon the winds and rain, bend the elements to her will, but her greatest strength was her heart, her unwavering dedication to her people. The city rebuilt, stronger than before, its spirit forged in the fires of adversity. And Yhello? She was the cornerstone of this new era, her magic woven into the very fabric of the city. The blacksmiths forged weapons and tools with her blessings. The farmers' crops flourished under her care. Udani was a testament to her legacy, a city reborn from the ashes of its past. She remained a silent guardian, her magic a comforting presence on the salty breeze. Yhello would often be seen standing by the sea, her eyes fixed on the horizon. She was a part of the land, the sea and the sky. Her spirit was in the whisper of the wind, the crash of the waves, the rustle of the leaves. She was everywhere and nowhere, a silent protector watching over her beloved city, the last witch forever bound to the city she loved. Her story became a part of Udani's history, a legend that would be passed down through generations. The city thrived, its people living in peace and prosperity, always remembering the witch who had given them so much. Yhello's legacy was not just in her magic, but in the love and hope she had inspired. She was the last witch, but her spirit lived on in the hearts of the people of Udani.